Thanks for coming back to the channel. Back on the 62 unibody this week, part 2. Hope you enjoy it.
Even though we're using a new wiring harness, we have to use some of these old wires. As an example of the wires that go to the headlight switch and wires that go under the hood from the gauges out to the sending units. I wanted to show you what we've been up to here. I know this looks like a mess, but there's a method to all of this madness you see here. Our headlight switch, the plug on the back of it is bad. And I'll show you what I'm talking about there shortly. But we've pretty much got most of the wires marked where we know where they go, and we think we're pretty close to being ready to start on a new wiring harness. But let me show you that some of this old wiring and that switch plug. This is what was under the dash. Splices and butt connectors. Look at this plug that goes on the headlight switch. Well, one fuse completely gone, and we found out why. This terminal here, you see that this one right here, this terminal right here, it's shorted inside the plug somewhere or another, because we tried a new fuse and it blowed in immediately. So we have a short somewhere in this. It doesn't really look that bad, but I'm sure the connectors are burnt and have been arcing. And this fuse, you can move it. There you can see. Rusty. So we done away with that, and what we're going to do is just run wires directly to the terminals on the switch. Put our own connectors on there. This is a good reason why you do want to replace wiring on old vehicles, because it's not just that the wires are bad, but you know, they're stiff, and yeah, a lot of them been hot over the years. But here's the main problem: a lot of people have spliced, and which I guess is okay, but you do that over a period of years and the wiring just gets to the point where it's not working well. Here's what we're doing to eliminate that plug. This is a new headlight switch. It was in the truck. They probably tried that thinking that's where the short was, but this is our solution. We're just putting terminals on the ends of the wires and plugging them directly onto the terminals on the switch. The heat shrink that you heat up makes a good tight connection around the wire. And of course, they're crimp style. Use a crimping tool. But that's our solution for the plug on the headlight switch. We're going to be putting a plug and a jack on the back of the instrument cluster, where we can just plug it in, unplug it if we need to take it out. And I'm doing this up here in the basement workshop. Have my book here with shows all the diagrams and have our good soldering iron and heat shrink tubing as whatever we need to do this. But we're going to wire all of this up to where we can have a plug on the back. I'm going to get started on that, and I'll show you when I get finished what it looks like. We are wired. Got our plug here. And we were 1 pin shy. This is a 10-pin plug.
We were one connection shy, and that's the high beam indicator in the center of the dash. And I just ran a wire to it and labeled it. So not worth putting another 10-pin plug on just for that. But we're all hooked. Everything is wired in. And I made it as neat as I could. Have these wires marked where they go in the wiring harness. And this is a, wouldn't say waterproof, but it's a moisture proof plug. It has a seal down where they meet and snaps together. Nice plug. So that takes care of that. And once we get the new wiring put in, we can just plug this in and we should be good to go. Okay, we're going to attempt to put this steering wheel on. And it'll go right like that. So we need to make sure our hub's centered up good. And there's a completed steering wheel. Went on pretty easy. Here's a shaft that we had to add between the column and the old coupling. And he's drilling a hole there for a pin. While we was finishing up that steering, went ahead and put the speedometer sensor that'll work with the new gauges. And this kind of floats, so I just put a cable tie on it just to hold it still. Took the oil sensor out because that has to be changed to work with the new gauges. See if we can get the new one put back in. And there's a fuse panel. Yeah, right there. Used a couple of stainless head bolts out here to fasten the fuse panel. Okay, here's a headlight switch. We have all the wires connected back, and we put the cloth tape, wrapped it in it. So we're going to go ahead and put it back in the dash. Shouldn't have to be doing anything else to it. And before we get started on the rest of the wiring this morning, just an update. Steering column's in. Shifter's working fine. And we're getting rid of a few more wires here inside. Headlights, parking lights, turn signals, all working. So we mounted the light switch back in the dash. One main wire, that's what we have running here on top of the truck, that goes to the battery. Of course, we'll route it through the firewall, and that's just temporary right now. So pretty good progress. Hopefully we can finish up the wiring today. There's a couple more things that I don't think I've mentioned in the videos. Fuel injected carburetor. So we need to put that on. That'll get a new intake manifold too. Let's get so fuel injection, new intake. There's a fuel injection called a kill shot. There's some front end parts. I think he found had a couple of wire items in the front suspension, so I think that's what that is. Looks like upper control arms. So, and kind of getting ahead of myself, but this bed. And I think what most guys are doing, they're either putting wood planks, fastening them down to the metal bed, or using a 4x8 sheet of oak plywood and then plow grooves where the hold downs go. But we'll get to that later. That's one of the finishing items. All right, we're done for the day. Thought I'd recap what we got accomplished. We did get the instrument cluster wired in and plugged in. And we moved the vintage air controls. It was in those 3 holes. Moved them over here on the dash. Made that look a little better. There's a dash with the key turned on. And there's our left blinker indicator. Right blinker. High beam works, it's right here. We tested it. I won't go to all the trouble doing that. And the gauges will dim, as you can see there. We still have some more wire loom to put on. But this wire here, it will fasten up here all the way across. Wiring just takes a while. You have to trace wires and make sure you're hooking things up right so you don't have a problem. This morning we pulled the fuel tank out. Does fit good, and we have the place for the sending unit. Got the ins and outs for the fuel pump. So what we're doing now, trying to get this float that came with the new instrument panel. Originally, this arm right here was that long plus this long. So we got a real short throw, but we think we've got it. That would be in the empty position, and that's full, so I think that will work. So we're going to get that mounted in there. Okay, sending units installed, and we checked it. We tipped the tank upside down and where the float would be at the top, and it read 90 ohms, which is what a Ford's supposed to read, and it reads 0 at the very bottom. So that's good. Now he's working on the fuel lines. All right, we should be ready to go back up with the fuel tank. There's his fuel lines. He's putting the electronic fuel injection on the motors, so those are high pressure lines that we got on that. This is just a vent right here, and that'll be mounted up above the tank somewhere. This is a sending unit, and we've got pigtails on it, and we'll just use butt connectors to connect to those 2 lines right there. All right, we had the fuel tank back in. There's the 2 lines coming out of it for the fuel pump and the return. And we've got a vent line right here. Those are the 2 sending unit wires right there. So now it's just a matter of mounting the fuel pump. We'll put it right in, just slightly in front of that shock, and hooking everything up. All right, there's the fuel pump mounted on the frame. Lines run to it. We've got our 12 volts running to it. The 2 black wires hanging down, that's going to be the grounds, and they go to the battery, which is going to be relocated. Not much left to do under here until we get the battery relocated. It'll be right in this area right here. He's going to build a box and drop it down below the bed where you won't see it. Well, we pretty much finished everything we could underneath the truck. So it's going to try to take this old intake off and put the fuel injection with the new intake, see if we can get it put on. What's your next step?
Well, we need these old intake gaskets off. Which don't look like gonna be much problem.
There's a new shiny intake. That's gonna look sharp on there. Now, explain to me the difference in these. Like, what's this fitting for?
It's a vacuum port.
Okay.
It's gonna go here on this one.
So it has one.
Yeah.
Okay, I see it's at an angle there. Okay. It's just shaped a little different.
That's the
Yeah, that looks the same.
one that's corroded up.
And we got a sensor here, and it goes there.
It's temperature sensor.
That temperature sensor, so you need two.
Yeah.
One for the regular engine,
Temperature, yeah.
and then one for the fuel injection. Okay. And you're gonna mount it in the head, or you're gonna mount it in the intake?
Have to put it in the head, I guess.
Okay. Here's thermostat housing, and it's pretty pitted up, so we're gonna take some steel wool, where Mark is, and see if we can polish it up. Then I'll show you what it looks like when it gets done. I think it'll be cleaning up pretty good, don't it? Yeah, it looks a lot better. Let's catch up here and see what he's doing. You got the back cork gaskets put on. And he's cleaned all this off, and he did take some sandpaper and cleaned off the metal just to make a good seal. And show them what they're using, and people can tell us that that's not the right stuff. Form a gasket Permatex. All right, we're going to quit for the day. Quite a bit accomplished there. I did a lot of watching, and Mark done the work. He got the intake, new intake on, and things mostly back in their place. Of course, still some wiring to do. Fuel gauge is working, and we've already checked the temperature and the oil pressure gauge, and they should work once we hook them up to the sensors out here.